today's conversation for the next 20 minutes or so, we'll talk about pain. We'll talk about failure. Is there, and I know like you've had an injury. We both had the same injury.
Yeah.
Why this topic? Like why focus your time even post career now, or our talk today on injury itself?
Chronic pain in general. Like, you know it, you've been in it. It's something that significantly affected your career. As a former semi-pro cyclist, it's what ended mine. I have this unique experience where my MRI shows a ruptured spinal disc with fluid literally leaking into my spinal canal and pressing on my nerves. And yet I have no pain whatsoever. And I want to explain why. Chronic pain in general affects about half of the US population. There's over 100 million American adults suffering from chronic pain. It's rising at a substantial rate. It's costing us a ton of money. And from an athletic perspective, so many people's careers end because of chronic pain. And that was the case with me, where I spent a year and a half out of college. I was partially bedridden. I was on Vicodin. I had suicidal thoughts. My identity had been ripped from me because I was in pain from the moment I woke up till the moment I went to bed. And had I known everything I know now, my life and my sporting career would have taken a dramatically different turn. So that's why I'm so passionate about this.
What happened?
So I was out on a training ride one day. So back up 12 years. It's the summer after my freshman year in college. I'm a semi-pro athlete, semi-pro cyclist, and I've just entered this new category where I'm going to be racing against pros. I was going to do a race that Lance Armstrong had won 2 years prior. So I'm like starting to do these big races for the first time. And I'm pretty nervous about all of it. And I'm out on a training ride one day, and all of a sudden I feel this lightning rod of pain in my back. It's like somebody was twisting my spine from end to end. And the pain was so bad I couldn't sit on my bike seat. And I'm like, what's going on? I saw a chiropractor. He was like, don't worry, 2 weeks, you're going to be back on top. And 2 weeks go by, pain's still there. 4 weeks go by, 8 weeks go by. My season is going down the drain. I can't race. I can't sit in a chair. And then eventually I get an MRI that diagnosed me with a ruptured spinal disc when I was like, that's when I realized this is a whole lot more serious than I ever thought it was.
It happened to me. Same sort of thing. I was in my second year of professional baseball. I was, making, I guess, semi-pro, right? Like making $3,000 a year playing for the Mets. And just so stressed. Like the stress of competition. Am I going to get caught tomorrow? I'm not making any money. Yeah. What am I doing with my life? Was warming up, and I had a little bit of I could feel pain in my back. And I was in a warm up and just ran to the right, and the whole thing popped. And I felt the liquid. I felt like this drain going down to my foot. Couldn't walk. Went out that inning. Told the center fielder I'm not going to get to any balls. I knew the end of my career was like here, the imminent. I'm on the field like in front of 10,000 people doing it. And from that moment on, it was like, I probably even still feel it, like scared for certain movements. What's my body going to feel like? Or, am I prepared enough? Like, can I play golf today? Can I run today? I'm going to feel terrible.
Can I sit?
Yeah. Can I sit today? What's it going to be like on an airplane for 6-10 hours? Even though we're physically strong enough now to not have to deal with that, but it's always in the back of our heads. How do you, in the work you do now, or kind of looking back on your injury, how do you kind of think about, well, I'm healed, but I'm still worried. I'm still scared.
Yeah. And here's the thing. I'm not. And I'll tell you why. So on this journey, I tried every single physical treatment that I could get my hands on. Chiropractor, acupuncture, physical therapy. I saw back specialists. I got nerve root injections. Nothing was working for me. And I had this paradox, and I don't know if you related to this at all, but I would have days where I do everything that the doctors and the specialists said to do. Ice your back, stay off of it, like treat yourself well, don't be stressed. And I could be in immense pain on those days. And then the days where I would do all the stuff that they said not to do, like sitting and not icing, all this stuff, I could have less pain on those days. And I was thinking, all right, what's going on? There's got to be something else here. And it wasn't until a year and a half after the initial injury occurred that my mom actually gave me this book, and it was by an NYU medical doctor, Dr. John Sarno, whose thesis was pain, specifically, back pain, knee pain, common pain syndromes, is not actually the result of tissue damage all the time. That's not always the case. In fact, pain can actually be the result of this fight or flight response that's driven by the brain. And the first time that I heard this, I was like, you got to be kidding me, right? Because I've seen my MRI. I've seen, like you, like I've seen the juice, like, spilling out into my spinal canal. You can't tell me that that's not causing my pain. But I started to read the book, and first time I was like, no, it doesn't make sense. Then something pulled me back to it, and I started to see myself on every page. He talked about the people who are more prone to long-term chronic pain, people who tend to be more perfectionistic, people-pleasing, who maybe have low self-esteem, which is how I definitely characterize myself. Like my sporting endeavors were definitely a cover for ego and not feeling great about myself. And everything just started to click. It started to click why I could have pain one day and not the next, why I was prone to this, and why my pain just didn't functionally seem to make sense. And within about a month of reading this book and following the recommended exercises, my pain from my back was gone. And this is after a year and a half of trying everything, Jeremy. It was crazy.
Did you get the surgery?
I did not get the surgery.
I got the surgery.
How is your back now?
99% of the time I feel good.
Yeah.
Probably you too. Like we both had the same injury. Yeah. I went the surgery route because it was more immediate. Like I couldn't even stand up straight. I couldn't go to the bathroom. I couldn't sleep. It was an emergency. Yeah. I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not here to prescribe anybody do surgery versus not surgery.
Same here.
So the focus of kind of what I wanted to dive into was like, I'm back. I feel good, but I need to make sure that, like, mentally, how do I make sure that I'm okay? Yeah. Where, if I have a history of injury, some guys just come back from a torn ACL like nothing happened. But those guys who are a little bit different, who think about the injury, who that's the most interesting part to me is I know my body's fine and my body can handle it. Like we had Charlie Merrill on. I'll cut this, but I have to edit the podcast. But I interviewed him a couple of weeks ago, and he said we were talking about pain too. He's a physical therapist working with people with chronic pain, and what he was saying was very interesting. It's like if you haven't exercised in 6 weeks and you exercise and you have a little pain in your hip, that's probably based on your inability to move at that time, but it doesn't mean you're injured. Right. And so how can we as athletes and sports people and people working with people with injury educate them based on these things that we're just like, you can push through it. What does that look like tangibly? Yeah. And that's a great point. And I'm glad that you brought up your experience, because the chronic pain that I am talking about here it's a specific type of chronic pain. It's the stuff that you've either had an injury and, 4 or 5 months after that injury, you're still experiencing pain, like long after it's healed, or you have symptoms that don't seem to make sense, right? Maybe you have pain in the morning, but not in the evening, or doing very basic physical activity, things like that. If, for example, the pain that I would deal with, it's not the same thing as, Aaron Rodgers tearing his ACL. Like that's not the approach that I'm talking about. But what you described there is so common for people who have a history of injury. It's the catastrophizing, it's the anticipating pain. And what's really interesting about chronic pain is that if you were to take an MRI, a brain scan of somebody who is in chronic pain, so let's say 3 months after an initial injury has occurred versus 3 days,
after initial injury has occurred, what you'll find is if that person is still in pain, the regions of the brain that are processing pain are different. This is important because after a few months with chronic pain, the part of the brain that lights up is the one that's associated with learning and memory. So the same part of the brain that allows you to know how to instinctively get in your car and drive and just know how to drive a car is the same part of the brain that is keeping you in pain doing a benign physical activity like sitting or walking. So part of the approach is understanding, is actually creating safety in the body and recognizing that the body is strong. The body is meant to heal. That's what it does. And starting to shed the limiting beliefs and some of that fear around movement in a gradual way.
So we have high schoolers that listen to this podcast, parents, coaches.
Yeah.
If you were to come in and we can think of this as like a workshop almost. What is that? There's going to be somebody who twisted their knee, who still feels something. What are some things that tangibly athletes can and should know about? We're not saying play through injury. That is not good.
Right.
It's I know my body can do it, but do I trust my body? That very fine line there. How do you best approach that when talking to an athlete?
It's a great question. So, and I work with some of my clients are athletes who, triathletes, folks who are competing at a high level. And it's important that like whenever you get a new symptom, let's say it is a new symptom, you get it checked out, right? But what can happen is like, you twist a knee and 4 months later, you're still experiencing pain. It's like, all right, the first step is actually go back to doctor, get whatever scans you need to see like whether there's actually any damage there. And essentially rule out anything structural continually, right? So that's the first piece. The second piece though is there's an exercise that I use with my clients called somatic tracking. And this is actually something that can be really useful in competition as well when you're in the pain cave, as a cyclist would say. So somatic tracking is all about changing your relationship to how you experience a symptom, right? So often like when like the way that you described, like the 99%, like that your back is fine. For the 1%, like what's going through your head when you're doing an activity that's like, ooh, I don't know. Like what are some of the thoughts that you have?
It's not about that I can't do it. It's like I'm stressed with work. I'm stressed at home. Okay. It's outside factors that feels like it weighs down on me, increasing whatever symptom it might be. If it's sciatic pain down my leg, if it's in my toes, if it's my most stressed days, I feel that in my feet.
Yeah. And then we try to resist the pain, right? Like that's the normal thing. It's like, oh, I need to escape it. I need to ice it. I need to think other thoughts, whatever. Yeah. So the approach with somatic tracking is actually the opposite. It's to go into it and to do it from a place of safety. Because what we like fundamentally, what we resist persists, right? And if you are with your pain in a way that is saying, this shouldn't be here. This is bad. This needs to go away now. Like, when does that ever work? Like, it just doesn't with anything in life, right? So the whole idea is to actually do the opposite, courageously move toward that painful sensation, open up to it, and really actually breathe into it. Really actually be with it, because when you're doing that, you're essentially teaching your brain that this sensation is safe. Because oftentimes, going back to this idea that the part of the brain that's associated with chronic pain is around learning and memory, the idea is that pain in and of itself is not a problem. Pain is actually a protection mechanism from the brain. Like, let's say you put your hand on a hot stove. You'll feel pain, right? The thing is that pain occurs before any tissue damage. So that pain is there to be like, hey, Jeremy, take your hand off that stove. Like, this is dangerous. In the same way, when we've conditioned the body to, if we take a step and we feel pain, or if we are sitting and we feel pain, like the same thing occurs. It's like, hey, the brain is like, we've been here before. We know that this is a painful thing. This is a dangerous thing. So stop doing it. And the way that you undo that danger signal is actually moving toward that sensation, teaching in a very structured way that like, this is a safe sensation. It's okay. And it's amazing how often the pain actually diminishes or goes away when you do that.
So if I'm a parent or coach and my athlete, again, we don't want to say play through a torn, UCL. Don't pitch through if it hurts. But when we think about a kid who like is returning from a shoulder injury, what are some tangible things that they've been checked out, they're cleared to play, they just don't trust that feeling yet to relearn that feeling? What tangible skills or items can a parent or a coach teach their athlete about returning back to where they were and trusting their body again?
Yeah, it's a great point. So I think of it in two ways: mind and body, right? So first is mind. Educating yourself on how the body actually heals is so important. Through like the process that we've kind of talked about is, can call it the nocebo effect, right? Where it's like opposite of the placebo, where, you take the sugar pill and then you sprout wings and good things happen. The same thing can be true. It's like, if you're worried about, you're coming back from Tommy John surgery and you're worried about throwing, like that fear is going to amplify chances of something going wrong, right? So really educating yourself on how the body has an amazing capacity to heal can just from a mental perspective reduce some of that fear. Also, what I said before, going to the doctor, actually really getting it checked out, making sure that there's no lingering issues. But the other piece for the body, and this is what I work with a lot of clients on, it's actually experiencing that fear in the body. So if we were to say, like taking that example of an athlete who is coming back, they're pitching for the first time, they might have a lot of fear, right? And so it's actually what I guide my clients through is a practice where you actually go into where you feel that fear in the body and you breathe into it. And what happens is that energy starts to release, right? Because there's this memory of all this pain that you went through from this injury. And as you learn to actually be with those sensations of fear in your body, the thoughts start to change, and what you feel in your body, that fear actually starts to change. It sounds kind of crazy, but I've seen this work many, many times. It's worked for me personally. And something that's basically the whole idea is going back into your body.
Going back into your body and feeling it as if it were. So my back injury, again, thinking about on bad days, like feeling it to its fullest, kind of walk me through that, what that looks like. In practice.
Got it. Okay. So we can do an exercise here. So are you able to think back to a time when you had a lot of fear around your back?
Yes.
Okay. So what's that time? Describe that, just a couple sentences.
At the end of my first year, I felt a pain in my back. I think I slid into second base wrong, and I felt something go wrong. It was not so bad where I had to stop playing. It was not so bad where I needed to go to the doctor. It was just like something. Ooh, my hamstring is a little bit tight right now. It wasn't always like this. I've never had an injury.
Yeah.
And then the stress of playing, and it was like a non-contact injury that fully ruptured the disc.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Not perfect, but like great example.
Yeah.
And when you think back to that example sliding into second, you have fear.
Yeah. If I didn't slide into second, where would my career be?
Yeah. Okay. So there's this sensation of fear that's associated with this experience. Here's the question for you. Where do you feel that fear in your body?
In where the sciatic pain is, in the left hamstring above the knee, about 4 to 6 inches.
Okay. Got it. So what does that fear in your hamstring, what does it actually feel like if you were to describe it to a 5-year-old?
Like a pinch.
A pinch.
Someone pinching that and not letting go.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. So are you comfortable to close your eyes for a second here?
Yeah, I'll do it. Yeah.
Okay. So with your eyes closed there, just take 3 deep breaths into that pinching sensation. Not trying to force it away, but just being with it. If it increases, great. If it decreases, that's fine. Do you notice anything different at all about that?
I'm more focused on it. Like I know exactly, if you're like, hey, you get one chance to like poke exactly where it is without looking, I would know
You would know
that
where it
is.
is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And does that give you a bit of unease?
Yeah, because I don't want to have to
Yeah.
get out of this chair or out of bed going, oh my goodness,
Right.
like it's back today. Today is one of those days.
Right. So there's fear associated with these activities that are pretty innocuous, right? Like,
Yeah.
how many times have you gotten out of a chair or out of bed and it's been totally fine? Probably
Every day.
hundreds, thousands,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Every single day. So that's that right there. What we just did, it's like the first part of like a multi-part process that I would guide a client through, of actually starting to open to it, where there might be actually that fear spike. And that's actually okay, because what you actually want to do is you want to move through that and stay present with it, because essentially an emotion like fear, these get trapped in our body, right? Emotions don't just go away if we don't experience them. There's like this signature of fear that's still left in your body. So essentially being with it, breathing into it, might actually, that fear might increase. And then what often happens is it actually decreases and then it fades away. And so if you're able to, as well, Jeremy, if you're able to see that the pain or the sensation itself gets worse just by sitting in the chair, that's a pretty telltale sign that there's something else besides a physical issue that's causing the pain, right?
Yeah. It's
and
funny.
It's
it's
common
like,
for everybody.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Right? It's an interesting way to think about, when I was playing I was my most nervous walking to the batter's box. I was my most comfortable in the batter's box. And I don't know what it is about being in a batter's box for me. But I don't know if it's because everyone's watching. I don't know if it's because you like zone in and you lock in on like your job. But it was always like the anticipation of getting to that point. From the on deck circle to the batter's box was the worst. In the batter's box is the best.
Yeah. It's
and I
like a go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, like, I think about that feeling all the time. And
Yeah.
I try to replicate that feeling. Where is my new batter's box? Is it doing this interview? Is it working? Is it writing a fantastic email, a manifesto? Right?
Yeah.
What is that batter's box for me? But what is that walking to the batter's box? And it might be preparing for a meeting. It might be a sales call. It might be so many different things that like who we are as coaches and parents and athletes like are dealing with in our own way, where we're not handling the trauma is the wrong way to think about it, certainly, but perhaps it's a mixture of anticipation and previous failures and regrets of doing that again.
Yeah. And here's the thing. It's like people, that's such a great example. And I think we believe that like, well, this is kind of with us for life, right? It's like if we have that, maybe it's not a trauma necessarily, but a negative experience, it's like, how do I actually release that? There's a way to do it. But we're not necessarily taught that. I think your batter's box example stands out to me because when my injury happened, it was when I was leading up to these really big races, and I was pretty darn nervous about those, right? There was a good chance that I was not going to finish. I'd be pulled before the races even finished, and I was going to feel pretty bad about myself, like let my team down, let myself down, feel unsupported. And it's so common for people before on the lead up to races, like athletes on the lead up to races or competitions, to have pain that starts up, right? I was on a podcast with a bodybuilder, and he said, every time before, like just a few weeks before a competition, I'd start to have a flare up. And it wasn't until a lot later that I realized this was due to like all these emotions, these fears, this fight or flight response in my body around what happens if I fail? What happens if I don't if I don't perform, what's that going to do to me? So I think that batter's box example is a relevant one.
If I have I have a game tonight. I play adult league soccer. I found a new sport, a new love. I don't play baseball anymore. I'll play golf, and we'll make this all about me. I played 2 days in a row once, sore. Never done it before. Yeah. Terrible.
Yeah.
And I was so exhausted.
Sore from my old injury site is sore, or just my muscles are sore?
My old injury site is sore, but I'm like, am I too tired to play? Am I going to get hurt again? Because I'm exerting too much energy where I haven't prepared my body enough to do these things. I feel an anticipation of, oh my God, am I going to pull it again today? Yeah. It's terrible.
So what do you do?
I just play through it. The soccer game I have tonight, like, I'm not an endurance athlete. I've played for 3 months. What if I move the wrong way? I'm worried about every single movement in the middle of a game. Do I not go to the left? Do I not go to the right? Well, I've never done that before. That movement I'm not an agile person. I am a straightforward, let me catch the ball, let me run to first or second base. So I'm retraining my body to make these different movements. Yeah. My question for you, based on like what we've discussed today, is if I have a game tonight, if I have a practice tonight, if I'm an athlete, and I want to make sure that I'm preparing my body and my mind as much as I possibly can. I think what we did earlier was a little bit of meditation, thinking about the point of, living with sort of where this trauma or where these emotions sit. I know that I'm structurally there. What specifically, maybe in accordance with that previous meditation, can an athlete do prior to a game to bring in that trust within their body again and reteach that trust that they have?
Yeah, that trust, that safety in the body. That's a great question. So there's a practice that I love both for peak performance as an athlete as well as pain relief. And it's called resourcing. And the whole practice is feeling safe in your body. So we can do a version of this in like a short amount of time here. We can edit it out if it's too long.
No, but, perfect.
If I were to, so basically resourcing is, the whole idea is feeling safe in your body. And there's internal resources and external resources. An internal resource could be like a belief or a mantra or a place in your body that feels good. An external resource could be a memory where you felt really safe. It could be a thinking of your loved ones, or a pet, or a place in nature, or in a stadium. So when I'm saying this and the word safety, like what comes to mind for you?
Safety is a place of no pain. Safety is a place of relaxation and trust. Okay.
Do you have memories that come to mind as you were saying those words? Where you didn't feel pain, where you felt free in your body?
I hit a grand slam my first year of professional baseball, and I just crushed. And it was, and I think back at that at the most like pure, but I needed it, in the stretch of the season. The team needed it. The fans needed it. I felt so in my body, in the zone, in flow, confident. Yeah. That I knew I was going up to do that. I knew I was going to do that, and it happened. That to me is the purest of pure that I can recall.
Oh, that is pure. Okay, so as you're saying that, what emotions are you feeling? Or what are you feeling in your body?
Happiness.
Yeah.
Like bliss I used before, and that's a word I think that's the feeling.
Yeah, feeling of bliss. Just feeling on top of the world. Like you feel good. Your teammates are there shouting. They're super stoked for you. Yeah. So if this were a longer practice, what I'd do is I'd guide you through a practice where you're actually reliving that memory, where you're feeling that safety, feeling that goodness in your body, and just letting that flow. So oftentimes, resourcing, it's super useful before a competition. I use it throughout the day. Like if I'm going into a meeting or something where I'm a little stressed, like I'll take literally 5 breaths and I'll think back to a time when I felt safe, like my Grand Slam equivalent, right? And what that does is it creates safety in the body. It basically cuts through this talk track of all the mental chatter that can happen. Like, oh, am I going to get injured? What if I turn this way? Yada, yada, yada. And it actually just connects you back to feeling good. And the great thing is the mind does not know the difference of something that's happened in the past and something that's happening now. So when you're thinking about this experience, you're literally reliving it as if it were happening now. The same thing is true when you think of a negative experience. So this works both ways. But that's a practice that I would highly recommend. And I have a recording that I can pass along to you as well.
Would love it. We'll link it in the show notes. We'll put it in. We do have a series of meditations that I think are super relevant. It's just allows us to take a step back and think about, wouldn't say nothing, and I wouldn't say thinking back to the breath, but those moments that give us joy. I think if in preparation and in practice, they're incredibly valuable tools that can increase our output. If I have a terrible day at work, I'm going to have a terrible day on the golf course. I'm going to have a terrible day in my pickup soccer. If I have a terrible day at school and I have a game that night and just nothing good happened that day, I'm not going to have a good game.
Yeah.
And it's creating these environments and these touch points for us as athletes that I think are incredibly relevant. And it takes a lot of dedication from the people who are teaching this to make it digestible and easy. And I hope that this podcast does that. And I think your work does that, because pain is not good. And supporting people in their relief of stress and pain is a good thing. It allows people to find their happiness in better circumstances.
Yeah. And find it within them. I think that's the other key piece. Like there's so much out there around this idea that you need a pill or a procedure or something external from you to fix yourself, as if there's something wrong. My approach and what I truly believe is that we actually have all of the tools that we need in order to be healthy within us. It's really just about unlocking those. And there's some incredible stories of athletes who've recovered from chronic issues just like this. There's a film out called Pain Brain, where they talk to this former college football linebacker who had MRI with slipped discs, spinal degeneration, all this stuff. He was in immense pain throughout the day. After 6 weeks of their program, the guy was pain-free. I've worked with triathletes who've experienced pain throughout their body and getting them to a place where they not only are pain-free, but they recognize that their bodies are so much stronger than they ever thought they were. Mm-hmm. So there's immense amount of work that is immense amount of benefit for going through this process, not just from a get rid of pain point of view, but also from a athletic achievement point of view too.
We've got a little bit longer than I was anticipating, but do you have any final closing thoughts that an athlete, parent, coach should know about some of the work that you're doing?
Absolutely. So, well, if anybody is interested at all or has any questions, they can reach out to me at my website's aleckassin.com, Kassin. If you're interested just in this topic of chronic pain more, fantastic book that I would highly recommend. It's called The Mind-Body Prescription by Dr. John Sarno. This is the one that I referenced, the doctor I referenced earlier. And the biggest thing is, like, if you or your child or your partner is struggling with chronic pain, there's an idea out there that it's like a life sentence. You're going to have to manage it for the rest of your life. And what I'm here to say is that there's actually hope to cure it and to be pain-free. So there is hope out there.